It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Conversations with Joan. Conversations with Joan will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Lives, Conversations with Joan. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Conversations with Joan focuses on topics that are important to your life, from health and wellness to professional development to personal well-being. Change makers join me to share their insights, tips, and strategies so you can thrive and live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. Now, let's start talking. Midlife is a time when you may be looking back at how you've lived your life, and you may be thinking about what comes next. Are you happy in your current job or relationship? Are there things you always wanted to accomplish but never found the time? What will your next 20, 30, or even 40 years look like? Today's guest, Michael Clinton, author of the book, Roar into the Second Half of Your Life Before It's Too Late, says that after 50, we all can move loudly and proudly into a life that brings joy. Michael is the former president and publishing director of Hearst Magazines. He is also an author and photographer. Welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us.
Joan, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Michael, so many of us, when we hit middle age, we tend to think that the best is behind us and that there really isn't much to look forward to. And I know in my own life, everything that I'm doing now, the radio show, the magazine, the brand, I created all of this when I was in my mid-40s after raising my family. So I'm a firm believer in everything that you say and teach and have written about. So why do you believe that the best is yet to come?
Well, Joan, first of all, if you're 45 or 50 or 60 and you're healthy, you're going to have another 30, 35 years ahead of you. You could possibly live to be 90. And so you have the opportunity to have multiple careers, new relationships, new lifestyles. What I like to say is, let's say you're wrapping up your first career after 30 years at 55, you can launch into an entirely new career that can last you another 20 plus years. So the possibilities are very different than the construct that was handed to us by our parents in the days of, retirement at 60 and then, sort of the long slide. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more to do and a lot more capabilities for people to experience in the next, in the second half of their life.
And I really love this messaging because I know so many people. I have friends who hate their jobs. They really hate their lives. And all they keep saying is, oh, I just can't wait to retire. And I say to them, but you want to wish away the next 10, 12 years of your life. Why not reinvent or recreate something that can take you, as you say, to the next 20, 30, maybe even 40 years?
Yeah, I think, this whole notion, ROAR, the book, is an acronym. And the first R is Reimagine your life before others do it for you, whether it's circumstances or it's family or whatever the case may be. And I think that that's the key here. And I like to say, pivot out into a new world. I interviewed 40 amazing individuals. I call them the Reimagineers, people who completely changed their lives at midlife. Some of them were very unhappy in their jobs, as you said. Some were unhappy in their relationships. But they all found the path, and they tell their stories, which are quite inspirational. And the book also has a lot of practical advice and tips and strategies that you can use to really move yourself forward.
So you mentioned reimagine yourself. Let's go through the O, the A, and the R.
Thank you. The O is, own who you are. Own where you are at this point in your life. The past is, the past, and you can't change it. So just own it. Own your health numbers, your financial well-being. Look, what kind of life do you want to be living and how much money do you need to do it? Own your strengths, your weaknesses, your failures. Also, I like to say, go to your last number. Go to 90 and work backwards. What legacy have you left? What contribution have you made to the world? The A is act on what's next for you. And it's the introduction of a new concept called life layering to build a very rich life. And the final R is reassess your relationships, because your family, your friends, your community, your work colleagues, they're all the ones who are going to facilitate and help you get to where you want to go in your next chapter. So use those relationships, find your tribe, take the people out of your life who are not supportive of you, and, enhance the people in your life who are supportive of where you want to go with your next dreams and goals.
And I think, Michael, as you could see by my brand and the work is around changing your attitude, That is because what I learned when I was in my 40s and after raising my family, this is all the result of a loss of self-esteem, trying to figure out what the next move is, then going through significant personal losses in my life. And at the heart of it for me was learning the possibilities that are out there for me and then believing that I could achieve them. And I think once you do that, once you see what is possible and a belief that you can do it, it's unlimited. The sky's the limit for you.
Yeah, one of the great things, Joan, that comes up a lot in conversation are people who are in their mid 40s and they say, I wish I could go back to school. I wish I could learn something else, but I don't have the money to do it. And one of the things which I've learned is an enormous amount of money out there for adult education, Pell Grants, federal grants. Many universities in certain states let people over 60, for example, go to college for free. And in the book, I interviewed an amazing woman named Stephanie, and she was a book editor. And at 53 years old, she decided she wanted to become a doctor, which has a whole host of, steps that you have to take to get there. She ended up doing the homework and got all of her education funded. She's now 63. She's a doctor. And her story is a great one of, if you're really driven and motivated to do something different, you will find the path. Another guy who was a Wall Street banker who was very unhappy in that job went back to school and got a degree in adolescent education, and he now teaches math in the inner city schools of New York City public school system. So there is a lot of ways that people can get new education funded in midlife to spin them off into a new direction. It's just doing the work. It's making the commitment and doing the work.
You've had a very successful career in publishing. What did you learn while you were climbing that ladder that led you to the beliefs that you have today?
It's a great question. What I learned is, and I had some great mentors along the way, is to always be authentic, to always be transparent, to always be supportive, to be known as a fair and a fair boss and a fair guy, but also be straightforward and honest with people. And I think that led me on a really great path of growth and success. And what I also learned as I watched the world around me is, when your time comes to take yourself out, have the courage to take yourself out and to move into a new direction. So when I made the decision it was time for me to step out of the day-to-day, I had a whole plan worked out as to what I was going to do next. I hate the word retire. It's a very toxic word. I like to use the word rewire. We're always rewiring for the next chapter of our life, and it never stops. You rewire, as you said, Joan, when you raise your family, and then you rewired into your next chapter, and you'll rewire again at some point in the future. And, we're always kind of rewiring to the next chapter of our lives. And I think that having that kind of mindset and philosophy will keep you positive and moving forward. And it takes courage, and it takes commitment, and it takes focus. But it leads to great life satisfaction.
Well, and they say when you're doing something that you love, you never work a day in your life. And sometimes I work 7 days a week, 12, 14-hour days, and I don't feel like I'm working because I'm doing something that I love. And Michael, we've been talking about having the belief that you can do it and have the courage that you can do it. But, fear is really a driving force in so many people's lives. And what do you say to that person who is really afraid to make some type of a change?
Yeah, no, fear is real. And, we all have to go deep into ourselves to ask, why am I fearful of a particular situation and a scenario? There's a tool that we use in business that I think you can use in your personal life, which is called the SWOT analysis, really identifying your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And, fear falls into the threat sector. And sometimes, when you really think about it and you break it down, you're not necessarily as fearful as you think you are. And also the fear may be something that you were carrying on from the past that is no longer relevant in your life anymore. So I think with these people that I interviewed in the book, and many had fear in change, they spent a good year plus thinking about those kinds of things and how they break them down and how they broke them down. And so it can be done. But once again, you have to put in the work and the brain power to face the fears and to face the other things that you may face. Well, I interviewed a psychologist in the book, and she said in midlife, a lot of people do negative self-talk. because they say, I should have done this, I could have done that. And, her suggestion is that how to rid ourselves of that negative self-talk or those fears, or once again, to surround yourself with the people who really value you and see the possibilities in your life, to be the person who is always looking and maintaining the positive reinforcement from the world around you. That gives you the confidence to break down fear and other kinds of emotions that might be getting in the way.
And you said that you had a plan for your next chapter in life. Do you think having a plan can help someone mitigate the fear?
Absolutely. My plan was, believe it or not, in my 60s, I decided to go back to school and get a master's degree at Columbia University, which was in nonprofit philanthropy, because I love that sector. Obviously, I wanted to write this book that I just wrote. I'm a marathon runner, so I was planning my next marathon, although COVID got in the way of that. But I think when I stepped out, here's the key. We all sit in let's say, a work seat, a professional seat, a career seat. And, ultimately that seat may go away or you may leave that seat. Who are you when you leave that seat? And so I put in a lot of work to create an identity that was above and beyond that seat. And so when I stepped out of my great seat that I had, my professional seat, I was very full. I didn't get lost in a past identity. And I think a plan to create a holistic you allows you to be able to make those smooth transitions as you rewire into the next chapters.
And I think reimagining yourself really is an important key, particularly for women, because so many of us get caught up in the identity of being someone's mother, someone's wife, and then we lose that possibility of who we are. And, that reimagining yourself, that really is a key.
Yeah, I interviewed several women who were exactly in that stage of their life. And, it's interesting. I'm just thinking of two of them off the top of my head. One was a single mother who had triplets, I might add. And the other was a woman who was married and her children were grown up. And both made the decision that they had to sell the house that they raised their children in, because they both said that identity was they were mom in that house and they wanted to carve out their next identity. And so in both instances, the woman who was married moved to another city, which she and her husband were always interested in. And the mother of triplets sold the family house and took a smaller house in the same neighborhood. But it sort of allowed her to build out who she was going to become next. And, these were both women who were still in their early 50s, so had a really long run ahead of them in terms of who were they going to be post-child rearing, and, their kids were now in their 20s, and so now they were off on their own journey. So it was interesting to hear that perspective from both of them.
I had taken a number of years off to devote myself to my family. I had started off in public relations for a Fortune 500 company. Then I was an executive editor for a publishing company. And I stayed home to devote myself to my family. But after doing that for a number of years, you really talk about the negative self-talk. I felt like, for lack of a better word, an idiot. I felt like I wasn't even worthy of having a conversation with, because I had lost that part of myself. So there really is a reimagining of yourself that must take place, and then eliminating that negative self-talk that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think that happens, think about this, in 1940, the average life expectancy was in the low 60s. And, so people, once again, our parents, they retired, and they didn't live much longer in general. And, obviously, everybody had an individual story. But today the life expectancy is almost 80. And so imagine that you are, leaving your first job at 60 or 65. And the first year or two is a little novel, because you're free and you're taking trips and you're playing the proverbial golf game or whatever. But after a while, that gets a little boring. And, all of a sudden you have to say, gee, I've got 20 more years of living. I better be doing something that has bringing me value and purpose. And there are all sorts of things. You don't have to, work again if you don't want to, but you can certainly volunteer. You can go back to many classes you can do in school. You can, create new small businesses. And I think that what we're going to do, this generation is going to rewrite the script and the following generations are going to refine it. I think you're going to see this major renaissance of what it means to be, let's say, 50 to 90, over the next decade or two. It's going to be an enormous amount of role models that are going to emerge, and the 40 people in this book are great examples of that.
Well, and I always joke with my friends, you look at someone like Paul McCartney and you say, boy, that's not the grandpa we had, so.
Exactly. Mick Jagger.
Right.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, it's funny. We have a president who's 78 years old. We have, we have actors and actresses, Helen Mirren, who's in her late 70s, who gets amazing roles. I think you can continue to do what you do, I like to say, live longer, as opposed to get older, because it's all about the positive language of living longer. You can do what you do for as long as you want. Like government and corporations and institutions are going to have to really accommodate all of us, because the people are going to change it. The people are going to demand that they stay in their jobs, stay in their roles if they choose to, or start new things. And, the Kauffman Foundation, which is in Kansas City, 26% of entrepreneurs, and the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, are people 55 to 64, starting new businesses and new ideas. And so, it's going to be a real, I think, movement happening in the next decade or so.
And I think it's an exciting time, and books like yours help give us the tools to live the type of life that we want to live.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely.
And that book is Roar into the Second Half of Your Life. If you'd like to get more information about Michael and his work, you can visit roarbymichaelclinton.com. Michael, in our final moments, what's a takeaway? What do you want to leave our listeners with?
I want the takeaway to be the enormous amount of possibilities that one has when they get into their midlife and their 50s. You said it at the top of the conversation that life had passed you. Many people think that life has passed them by. What I would say is life is still ahead of you. You have a second chance. You have an opportunity to reclaim something. You have the ability to completely reimagine and reinvent yourself, because you're going to have, a long arc of life, assuming you keep your health, you're healthy and you keep yourself healthy. And so I think it's an enormous amount of optimism that you should have about what you can do next and what might be possible in your life, whether it is work, lifestyle, or even love.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I've really enjoyed this conversation because you are sharing everything that I believe. I am roaring into my second half, and I invite everyone else to join us. So thank you for being here.
Great to be with you, Joan. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided is the opinion of our guest and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, sign up for our mailing list, and be sure to follow the show on social media. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.